I was in the middle of a terrifying car accident, and the first person I thought to call was my husband. He declined the call and texted back, "I'm having dinner with my best friend, Sabrina. Can't come. You should call my dad." I replied, "All right then." What my father-in-law said when he showed up at my husband's table at the restaurant made the woman, his so-called best friend, drop her gaze while he rushed out to his car. "My name is Kennedy. I'm 33 years old, and I work at a major bank branch in Detroit, Michigan. Today is the 5th anniversary of my marriage to Grant. I wanted to give him a small surprise, a homemade dinner, with his favorite red wine and the Italian-style stew I spent 3 weeks learning to cook just right. I left the bank a little after 4 in the afternoon, still thinking about the Gruyere cheese that the Whole Foods near our house only occasionally carries. The drive wasn't far, but it was pouring rain in Detroit. As I turned into the intersection at Gratiot and Harper, a delivery truck ran the red light and slammed into the side of my car. The impact jolted my head against the window, and my shoulder was wrenched violently to the side. I was in too much pain to speak. In the haze of the moment, I still managed to grab my phone and text Grant. The message was simple. "Honey, I was in an accident. I'm being taken to Henry Ford Hospital. I need you." I wasn't expecting much, just the sound of his ringtone. But instead, I got a single reply. "I'm having dinner with Sabrina. Can't come. You should call my dad." I reread that line over and over again in the emergency room, where I lay alone with a dislocated shoulder, aching ribs, and a throbbing head, while the man I shared a bed with was out having dinner with his best friend. As always. Grant and Sabrina had been friends since college. For the past 3 years, they'd been working together at an insurance firm downtown Detroit, and ever since, their harmless friendship seemed to have more reasons to meet up any day of the week. I used to question it, but Grant always brushed it off. "She's divorced, emotionally unstable. I'm the only one she's got." I wanted to believe him, because I was his wife, not his investigator. But ever since Sabrina came into the picture, our Saturday afternoons vanished. "Holidays, if I didn't plan ahead," Grant would say. "I already promised to have lunch with her, you know that." A few months ago, at a company party, I saw Sabrina standing very close to Grant at the bar. Her hand rested lightly on his back, the kind of gesture a woman makes only when she believes she has the right to. I saw it, and Grant saw me see it, but he just shrugged, smiled, and whispered again, "She's just a friend." This morning, when I asked Grant if he'd be home early, I wanted him to be there on time for our anniversary dinner. He only said, "I have a meeting with Sabrina. She needs to talk about an insurance claim. I'll try to be home as soon as I can." I wanted to ask if he even remembered today was our anniversary, but no, I didn't ask. I just smiled, tied my hair up, and drove away from the house. In my mind, one question kept looping. When did this marriage become something only I was trying to keep alive? After the accident, when I realized Grant wasn't picking up the phone, I tried calling Mr. Harold, my father-in-law. I asked him to go immediately to the Amber Oak restaurant, the place where Grant and Sabrina had a regular table every Saturday evening. "I'm sure you'll find him there," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my hands were shaking. When the rescue team cut open the car door to get me out, the pain burned through my chest like fire. I couldn't move my right arm. In the haze of painkillers, I only managed to whisper one thing to the nurse. "Don't call my husband. He's busy." Call my father-in-law. Mr. Harold knows what to do. After that, I remembered nothing. The smell of antiseptic in the ER, mixed with the soft hiss of the air conditioner, made me nauseous and dizzy. My right shoulder was dislocated, and the doctor had to perform a manual reduction. One hand to stabilize, the other to rotate. The pain was so sharp I had to bite my lip just to keep from screaming. The first tear didn't fall because of the physical pain, but because the young nurse standing next to me leaned in and whispered, "We've called your husband 3 times." But no one answered. I looked at her, nodded in thanks, and turned my face away. In my mind, the screech of metal on metal rang loud, then fell silent, just like Grant's silence now. He wasn't here. The man who once promised, "I'll come whenever you need me," was at a cozy dinner table somewhere else, with candles, red wine, and another woman. I asked myself, if the roles were reversed, if he were the one lying here, too hurt to lift a hand, what would I have done? I knew the answer. I would have dropped everything to be with him. But he left behind only absence and silence that stretched endlessly. Another nurse walked in and said they had reached my father-in-law, Mr. Harold, and that he was on his way to the hospital. Hearing that made my chest ache. I knew he would come. He'd always been the only one in Grant's family who treated me like a daughter. I didn't want him to see how cold his son had become, but maybe it was time he did. I lay there, exhausted, the white ceiling lights spinning above me like they were turning in slow motion, and only one thought remained in my mind. When someone truly loves you, they don't make you text them a second time. It had been over 40 minutes since I was wheeled into the emergency room. The doctor had temporarily stabilized my right shoulder and given me painkillers, but there was another kind of pain no medication could ease. I lay still, the white light above my head so harsh it forced me to turn away. On the stainless steel table beside the bed, my phone sat silent, its screen black, not a single new message from Grant. I unlocked it, and for the third time, reread his last message. "I'm having dinner with Sabrina. She's not doing well. You should call my dad calm. Simple, emotionless. As if the woman in the hospital was just a distant colleague, not the wife who had shared 5 years of marriage with him, who cooked his meals, who stood by him through the job loss back in 2020. I stared at the word Sabrina, as if that name alone held an entire world. A world I didn't belong to. A college friend, a co-worker at the insurance company, a woman not doing well, who somehow always mattered more than me. On holidays, weekends, even when I almost died. I set the phone down slowly, as if afraid to shatter whatever fragile piece of me was still left. I didn't cry. I just felt a piercing clarity that I had just been replaced, in a way so logical it was cruel. And what hurt most wasn't discovering it now. It was realizing I'd known it all along, yet kept convincing myself my husband would never cross the line. I looked up at the ceiling, where the light flickered faintly across pale shadows. In marriage, not everyone cheats with their body. Some cheat by giving their compassion to someone else, and then leave you to carry the emotional burden for both of you. I turned my head slightly, and for the first time that night, I stopped waiting for Grant. Instead, I thought of someone else, someone I still believed had decency left in him, Mr. Harold. The emergency room door opened softly, breaking through the noise in my head. I turned to see Mr. Harold, my father-in-law, step in, coat still damp from the rain. His gray hair was slightly tousled, his shoes streaked with mud, but his eyes were clear, filled with worry. "How are you, dear?" he asked, his voice hoarse but steady. I nodded faintly, forcing a weak smile. Dislocated shoulder, a few cracked ribs, but nothing life-threatening. He came closer and placed his hand gently on my arm. A small gesture, but enough. I didn't know whether to feel sad or grateful. The first person I wanted to see after the accident was my father-in-law, and the man who once promised, "I'll always be there for you," was still at dinner. I didn't need to ask whether he'd seen Grant yet. I knew, if he had, he wouldn't be standing there so quietly. "Would you like me to take you home?" he asked. I shook my head. "I need to rest a bit, but could you go to the Amber Oak? I think he's still there." He looked at me, paused for a moment, then nodded. Without another word, he turned, gave my hand a brief squeeze, and left the room. I knew his nature. He didn't speak much, but once he decided something, nothing could stop him. At the Amber Oak, the restaurant Grant and Sabrina frequented, the atmosphere was warm and intimate, the clink of wine glasses soft beneath candlelight. Grant sat across from Sabrina, smiling lightly as he held a glass of red, when a familiar voice sounded from behind him. "Seems like you're having a wonderful dinner, son." The table froze. Grant turned, startled, and jumped to his feet when he saw his father standing there, coat wet, eyes sharp as a blade. Sabrina flushed, trying to look away. "Your wife was in a car accident. Emergency room. Doctor says cracked ribs, dislocated shoulder," Mr. Harold said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "And you're here, dining with the one who needs you more." The air shifted instantly. Curious glances turned their way. Grant stammered, fumbling for words. But Mr. Harold stepped closer, his voice unwavering. "If you don't get up right now and go to your wife, don't ever call me your father again." No one spoke. Sabrina kept her head down, and Grant stood frozen, like a man stripped bare in public. Mr. Harold turned away, not waiting for a response, because he knew, when it came to right and wrong, his son needed to see the consequence for himself. I didn't learn the details of that confrontation until the next morning, but when Mr. Harold left the hospital that night, I felt something Grant had never given me: protection. Less than 20 minutes after he left, my mother, Martha, rushed into the ER. Her face was pale with panic, gray hair disheveled beneath a wool hat, beige coat still soaked from the rain. She hurried to my bedside, gripping my hand tightly, her voice breaking. "Oh, God! Kennedy, I just got the call. You scared me half to death." I squeezed her hand, smiling faintly. "I'm okay, Mom." Dislocated shoulder, cracked ribs. But the doctor said I'll be fine. She nodded repeatedly, then glanced around the room, as if looking for someone. Her gaze stopped, on the empty chair beside my bed. The confusion in her eyes turned to disbelief, then anger. "Where's Grant?" "Where is he?" she asked, her voice low but taut. I didn't answer right away. I looked toward the window instead, avoiding her gaze. My mother exhaled deeply, sat down, and I realized she wasn't angry because I'd done something wrong. She was angry because someone had hurt me and wasn't there to face it. 2 hours after Mr. Harold left, the sound of leather shoes echoed in the hallway, making me turn my head. The door opened, and Grant walked in. The fluorescent light hit his face. Still neat, shirt pressed, tie perfectly in place. The faint scent of cologne clinging to him, as if he had just come from a date, not from witnessing a crisis. "Kennedy," he breathed out, pausing for a few seconds before stepping closer. "I came as soon as I heard." "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." My mother stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "When did you find out, Grant?" "Kennedy's accident happened over 4 hours ago." Grant swallowed hard, his voice faltering. I didn't know. Sabrina, my colleague, called me earlier. She was in a bad place, said she might do something stupid. I didn't dare leave right away. I was afraid if I did, something terrible might happen to the baby she's carrying." My mother frowned. "And your wife?" "She's here, alone, calling you over and over." Grant lowered his head, silent. I sat there, listening, as if watching a stranger recite a carefully rehearsed role. He spoke about responsibility, about being afraid someone might hurt themselves, about post-divorce depression. All of it sounded noble, compassionate, if it wasn't being used to justify abandoning his wife in the ER. I didn't interrupt. I just looked at him, no longer with accusation, but with the calm, cold stillness of water. I realized the cruelest thing isn't betrayal. It's when someone uses morality to legitimize their neglect. Grant sat on the chair beside the bed, took my hand. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'll make it up to you." I didn't pull away, nor did I return the gesture. I simply said softly, in a tone so calm it startled even me, "You don't need to apologize. Just remember, from now on, whoever truly needs you, go be with them." The air in the room froze. My mother said nothing, her stare colder than ever. Grant bowed his head, while I turned away, so he wouldn't see the weary smile fading beneath my tears. Afterward, Grant stepped out to sign some hospital deposit papers, and my mother pulled a chair closer to the bed, sitting down beside me. She didn't speak right away, just sighed, her fingers interlacing, thumb rubbing the small callus on her palm, a habit she had whenever she tried to hide her feelings. "Sweetheart," she began, voice gentle but slow, "I know you're disappointed. Anyone would be. But Grant's only human, you know. People make mistakes, they get confused, they falter." I didn't look at her, just stared out the window where the rain kept sliding down the glass. She went on, as if afraid that if she stopped, I'd argue. "What matters is, he's here now, taking care of you. Men don't always know how to show it, but they have their own kind of goodness. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Forgiveness? Sometimes it's the way to keep what's still worth keeping. I turned to her, the white light casting shadows across her face, the face of a woman who had endured over 30 years of marriage to my silent father. Maybe that's why she believed endurance was a kind of love. But I knew, some wounds don't hurt when you touch them. They hurt when you pretend they don't exist. "I understand, Mom," I said, my voice low, steady, so calm it didn't even sound like mine. "I'll give him more time." She held my hand, visibly relieved. "That's my girl." Grant walked back in just then, holding a bag of medication, face arranged into remorse. He asked the nurse basic questions about my care, then turned to me. "I'll take a few days off, stay with you until you're better." I simply nodded, saying nothing. I had already heard everything that needed to be said. Inside me, something had shifted. I no longer waited for apologies, nor believed in promises. I just felt a fracture, thin, long, silent, spreading between us. And I knew, even though I nodded, this forgiveness wasn't the start of healing. It was the beginning of the end. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Grant did everything a thoughtful husband was supposed to do. He picked me up, fluffed my pillows, cooked porridge using a recipe he found online, even brought a bouquet of white tulips, my favorite flower. But in all of those gestures, something felt off. Everything moved too smoothly, too perfectly, as if he were playing out a familiar role, the role of the remorseful husband. That evening, as I sat on the sofa with my right shoulder still bandaged, Grant brought over a cup of tea, set it on the table, and sat across from me. "I know you're hurting, Kennedy," he said softly and evenly. "I was wrong. I put too much faith in my friendship with Sabrina and forgot how it might affect you. From now on, I'll limit my contact with her. Strictly work, no more one-on-one meetings." I looked at him, my eyes no longer filled with questions, just a terrifying calm. Limit contact. A phrase so vague and polite, it sounded more like negotiation than a true break. He said those words with such practiced ease, I realized this wasn't the first time he'd justified himself. I smiled faintly. "I'm not asking you to do anything, Grant. I just hope you can be honest." At least once, he paused, then lowered his head, taking my hand. "I am being honest, Kennedy. I don't want to lose you." I let my hand rest in his, but something inside me had already drifted away. It wasn't anger, or even disappointment. It was emptiness. The feeling of hearing a once-beloved song, one you knew by heart, suddenly feel off-key, because the voice singing it no longer belongs to who it once was. I nodded, light as air. "All right, Grant. I believe you." That sentence made him exhale, thinking it was all behind us. But in my eyes, if he had looked carefully, he would have seen the peace didn't come from forgiveness. It came from having no expectations left. That night, when he turned off the light and lay down beside me, his cologne, the strong scent I used to find familiar, suddenly felt foreign. I turned to face the wall, closed my eyes. In my head, one sentence echoed without end. When someone has to promise they'll change, it means they already chose not to. 3 weeks had passed since I was discharged. Everything seemed to be returning to normal. Grant woke up early every morning, made coffee, added exactly half a spoon of sugar the way I liked. He took me to physical therapy, waited in the hallway with a magazine in hand, and drove me home in the familiar SUV. In the evenings, he cooked pasta, played soft jazz, and asked if my shoulder was feeling better. Sometimes I watched him set the table, roll up his sleeves, and I'd tell myself, forgiving someone is also giving yourself a chance. I had begun to trust again, at least on the surface. I texted Jenna, my best friend from college, saying, everything's going well, that Grant seemed to be changing, that maybe every marriage needs a few cracks to appreciate its worth. That Saturday morning, I had the day off. I got up early, planning to make the cinnamon waffles we both used to love, the kind with hints of cinnamon, butter, and vanilla that he always said, just smelling them makes me feel calm. I had the ingredients out, was mixing the batter when Grant came downstairs, shirt neatly buttoned, tie already knotted. I have a meeting with a client this morning, he said, slipping his phone into his shirt pocket. After that, probably going to play pickleball with some coworkers. You stay home and rest. Don't wait for me for lunch. I paused, wooden spoon midair in the bowl. A client meeting on Saturday? I asked, half joking, half curious. He smiled, kissed my forehead lightly. Yeah, they're only free on weekends. I'll be back early, then he left. The door closed, the car engine started, and the kitchen was filled only with the scent of cinnamon batter and a strange quiet. I don't know why, but that morning, as I watched the steam rise from my coffee mug, a faint feeling passed through me, like when you accidentally catch someone lying, but don't have the proof yet to admit you've been deceived. That afternoon, while cleaning the kitchen, my phone buzzed. It was Jenna, my best friend from college. No greeting, no emojis, just a short message and a video. Kennedy, I think you need to see this. I opened the video. It showed the pickleball court at the Northern Detroit Shopping Center, the exact place Grant frequented with coworkers. In the frame, there he was, in a navy polo and white athletic shorts, laughing with Sabrina. They had just finished a match, their hands brushing, sweat glistening on their collars, eyes locked in a way that wasn't friendly, nor professional. Then, in the next frame, Sabrina leaned in toward Grant. He bent down and kissed her. A quick, urgent kiss, but far too natural, like something they had done 100 times. The final scene, a silver sedan parked in front of the Marriott Hotel. Grant stepped out, opened the door for Sabrina. She smiled, placed her hand on his shoulder as they walked in together. The glass doors slid shut behind them, reflecting the golden afternoon light. The light I had so naively believed he was sharing with coworkers. I sat in silence. The phone screen dimmed. In the kitchen, the scent of cinnamon lingered, but instead of warmth, it felt heavy, sweet to the point of suffocation. Grant hadn't gone to meet a client. He'd gone to see the woman he had promised to limit contact with. I didn't cry. I only felt one thing. Everything he said, every act of care, every morning coffee, was decoration on a perfectly staged lie. And that morning, as I stirred waffle batter, I had unknowingly mixed truth and the last of my trust into the same bowl. I replayed the video Jenna sent, this time slower, more carefully. Sunlight glinted off Sabrina's tan skin, her tight gray athletic crop top revealing a slim, toned waist. Her blonde hair was tied up high, her face glowing, smile so bright you could see the dimple on her left cheek. I watched for a long time, trying to spot any signs of someone in crisis, or pregnant, like Grant had claimed that night at the hospital. There were none. No trace of pain, no gestures of someone seeking salvation. Sabrina wasn't pregnant, she was just happy. I sat motionless, my heartbeat slowing. Every image in my mind began to align like puzzle pieces. That night, Grant claimed she wanted to do something foolish. The way he lowered his head in front of my mother, voice trembling as he said, I was scared to leave her alone. Something could happen to the baby. And my mother's words afterward, forgive him, maybe he was just helping someone. I had believed. We had all believed. But the truth was, Grant never helped Sabrina. He chose her. He crafted an entire narrative to justify his betrayal, using my compassion and my mother's forgiveness as a shield. I set the phone down, exhaled, my palms cold. There's a kind of betrayal you don't need to hear or see. You just need to realize everything you were told was a lie. On the dining table, the waffle batter from that morning still sat, cooling. I looked at it, remembering how Grant once said, "Love means sacrificing for others." Maybe he was right. Only I never imagined the others he meant would be Sabrina. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, hovered over David, my younger brother, a lawyer, the one who once told me, "Just say the word, and I'll handle the rest." But I didn't know where to begin. I turned off the screen, got up, stepped into the yard. The afternoon breeze rustled through the lavender rows behind the house, their scent so faint it made me pause and breathe deeper. Across the wooden fence, Mrs. Margaret Ellis, my elderly neighbor, once a nurse, was watering her yellow chrysanthemums on the porch. She saw me and smiled, her voice hoarse but warm. "Oh, Kennedy, I heard from your mother. You were in an accident." "Are you feeling better?" I replied with a soft smile. "Much better now." "I was making cinnamon waffles again. Thought I'd bring you a few." She chuckled, a gentle smile like late autumn sunshine. "Well then, bring them over." I just brewed some mint tea, enough for two. A few minutes later, I was at her house carrying a warm plate of waffles. We sat on her porch, the tea steaming softly, the air mild and still. I watched my hands on the teacup and, almost without realizing, asked in a whisper so soft even the wind might miss it, "Mrs. Margaret, do you think forgiving a man who shows signs of cheating is foolish?" She looked at me, quiet for a few seconds. Her gaze was slow, steady, the gaze of someone who'd witnessed more loss than I imagined. "Kennedy," she said softly, "when I was a nurse, I learned one thing. If a wound isn't disinfected, it will fester, no matter how clean it looks. Forgiveness is the same. It only means something if the person truly wants to heal." She paused, then lowered her voice, as if recalling something. "Actually, I wasn't going to say anything, but maybe you should know. The week you were away on that business trip 3 months ago, I saw Grant bring a blonde woman home a few times. At first, I thought she was a relative, until I saw them holding hands at the door. I set the teacup down, my hands trembling slightly. The wind in the garden picked up, scattering a few yellow petals across the stone path. I wasn't surprised. I just felt everything in my mind click into place, like someone had finally flipped the switch in a room I'd been keeping dark. Mrs. Margaret squeezed my hand gently. "I'm sorry, Kennedy. I thought you should know the truth. What you do with it is up to you." I nodded. "Thank you. Actually, I already know what I need to do." For the first time in months, something inside me felt completely clear. Not hate, not pain, but resolve. When I returned home, the sky had faded into that pale gray of late afternoon. The house was silent, still carrying a faint trace of laundry detergent from when Grant had done chores a few days earlier. I looked around. The dining table, the wedding photo frame, the mug with Mr. and Mrs. Carter he once bought during our Nashville trip. Everything looked so normal it felt fake. I sat down at the table, opened my phone, tapped on Brian's name, my younger brother. "You need help?" Brian's voice came through, firm, unsurprised. I simply said, "He cheated. And I don't want him coming back into this house." "Got it," Brian replied, asking nothing more. "I'll take care of it now." Less than 2 hours later, a locksmith arrived and replaced all the locks. Brian sent me a photo confirmation, along with a message. "New keys done. Moving company will be there tomorrow morning. He has 48 hours to clear out." And don't speak to him alone. I read that message several times, feeling both relief and a chill. Everything happened so fast, I barely had time to feel anything. only to act like I'd rehearsed this my whole life. Late at night, I opened the closet, pulled out the old cardboard boxes, and started packing up everything that belonged to Grant. Clothes, shaving kit, the watches he used to brag about. Symbols of success, he called them. Each item I sealed carried the same meaning. His role was over. When I taped the last box shut, the clock read 11:47 p.m. Outside the window, the yard glowed softly beneath the street lamp. No cars, just the gentle sweep of wind through the oak trees on the porch. My phone buzzed. It was Grant. A short message appeared on the screen. Just finished a pickleball game. We're at a coworker's birthday party now. I'm a bit drunk, probably staying at the hotel nearby. Don't wait up, I stared at that line for a long while. A strange laugh welled up, amused by the confidence of a liar, and by the fact that I once believed he would come home. I set the phone down on the table, exhaled quietly, and replied, "Get some rest. Everything at home is taken care of." After that message, I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs. For the first time in years, I went to bed alone, and the quiet no longer felt frightening. It was the sound of someone finally reclaiming herself. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains, casting a soft golden streak across the wooden floor. I made coffee and played my favorite song, the one Grant used to say, "Too sad, change it." Today, I let it play all the way through. At 7:30 a.m., the moving truck arrived. Two workers began carrying the labeled boxes onto the porch. Everything looked neat, orderly, as if it had never belonged in this house at all. I signed the paperwork, thanked them, then sat by the window, coffee in hand. Around 8:50, a familiar engine rumbled at the gate. Grant's silver SUV screeched to a halt, dust rising. He stepped out, shirt wrinkled, tie crooked, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. I knew he had just left the hotel. He looked around the yard, saw the sealed boxes, the locksmith checking the new locks, and he understood immediately what had happened. He charged up the steps, slammed his hand on the door. "Kennedy! Open the door, we need to talk." I didn't go out. I just stood in the living room, watching through the sheer white curtain. His face, the man who once said, "I'll never let you be hurt," was now twisted with rage and fear. He called again and again, his voice lowering, shaking. "What are you doing?" "This is a misunderstanding. I just dropped her off after the game." "You have to believe me, Kennedy." I didn't answer. I just watched and realized something simple. This wasn't the man I once loved. One of the movers stepped outside and handed him Brian's letter. Notice of property transfer and requirement to vacate premises within 48 hours. Grant read a few lines, then let out a bitter laugh. "She really did it," he muttered. He turned away, hollow-eyed, looking up at the house once more. I knew in that moment he was trying to claw back the control he'd lost, but it was too late. He walked back to the car, opened the door, then stopped and looked up, toward the second-story window where I stood. Our eyes met, just for a second. Then I closed the curtain. The engine started. He drove away. In the stillness that followed, I sipped my coffee, bitter, but the kind of bitterness that tasted like freedom. 3 months later, one cold and damp morning, I arrived at the Wayne County Courthouse an hour early. The stone steps still glistened with dew. I sat in my car, watching people come and go, feeling an odd calm. Grant arrived 15 minutes late, neatly dressed, but gaunt, avoiding eye contact. We spoke exactly 2 words. "Hello?" and "Let's finish this." The hearing was brief, with little to dispute. The house was confirmed as my separate property since I had purchased and paid for it entirely before the marriage. We had no children, no significant joint assets. Brian, my brother and attorney, wrapped everything up in 17 minutes. When the judge struck the gavel, the sound rang out like the final punctuation of a long, exhausting chapter. Grant signed, then looked up, his eyes hollow, regretful. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. I simply stood, thanked the judge, gathered my papers, and walked out. Outside, light snow had begun to fall. I inhaled deeply, feeling the cold settle in my chest, so clean. It made my heart feel light. I knew from that moment on, my life finally belonged to me. 1 year after the divorce trial, the house was still mine, but now it carried a completely different soul. No longer a home for two, it had become the home of a woman who had chosen to stand on her own. I began renovating everything in the style I had always loved, but was once dismissed by Grant. Minimal rustic mixed with modern comfort, a design many American women favored in 2025. The living room was repainted in a calming white sand shade, the walls adorned with black and white photo frames, and a wooden sign carved with the words, "Peace is a choice." The oak floors were refinished and topped with a hand-woven beige rug. The ceiling lights, Scandinavian style, cast a warm glow across the room. The reading nook by the window was now where I sat each morning, with a brown leather rocker, a lush monstera plant, and a small speaker playing my morning Jazz Detroit playlist. The kitchen was my favorite part. I replaced all the old cabinets with natural light oak shaker-style units, installed white quartz countertops with gray veining, and finally bought the Betrayal Barista Express espresso machine I had dreamed of for years. The kitchen window opened onto a small garden, where I grew mint, rosemary, and lavender in ceramic pots. The scent of herbs mixing with fresh-baked pastries each morning made the whole house feel soaked in freedom. Tonight, I opened a bottle of red wine, set out a few crystal glasses, and invited Brian and Mrs. Margaret, my neighbor, for dinner. I cooked lemon cream pasta, olive salad, and baked apple pie. The very dessert Grant used to ban because the cinnamon smell gave him headaches. Now, that cinnamon was the scent of happiness. Mrs. Margaret sipped her wine, looked around, and smiled gently. Only a year, and the house feels completely different. But you're different too, Kennedy. Your eyes are brighter now. I smiled and clinked glasses with her. In that moment, I realized I didn't need anyone to turn this place into a home. I just had to choose myself again, and the rest, naturally, would find peace. That night, after the guests had left, I turned off most of the lights, leaving only the amber glow of a small table lamp. I stood in the new kitchen, listening to the rhythmic hum of the espresso machine, and whispered a sentence meant only for me. This is what home really feels like. I first heard about it from Brian, on a June afternoon, when he came over to help me replace the water filter under the sink. He hesitated, then said, "Kennedy, have you heard about Grant?" I shook my head. Brian looked out toward the garden and spoke slowly. "He's under internal investigation at the company. Ethics violations, related to his relationship with Sabrina, and some discrepancies in the claims audit reports." I stood there, silent. Not because I was shocked, but because there was nothing left to feel. Brian sighed, set the wrench down. He lost his job. Sabrina left town after that. Some say she got engaged to a doctor in Houston. A few days later, my phone buzzed late in the evening. It wasn't Grant's old number, but an unfamiliar one. The message was short. "Are you doing okay?" I'm sorry for everything. Can I see you for a moment?" Just to say one honest thing, I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had blocked all his numbers, accounts, and emails months ago. He might find new ways to send a message, but no way back. That night, I sat in my office, the soft golden light from the lamp glowing through the curtains. My laptop open on a half-finished video titled "Redesign Your Life After Divorce," a topic I was preparing to share at the Single Women's Workshop at the local library. On my desk lay a small notebook. I flipped to the last page and wrote one more line. "Forgiveness doesn't need an audience. You just need to know you've moved on." Grant lost his job, lost Sabrina, lost his place in my life, but none of it was my tragedy anymore. That was his choice, and the consequences were his. One early autumn afternoon, I was driving home from a post-divorce women's group meeting at the Grand Rapids Library. The road home passed by a familiar intersection where, more than a year ago, I had once sat in my car, frozen, heart pounding, realizing that my husband had chosen another woman. The intersection hadn't changed. It still had the same faded traffic light, a slightly tilted stop sign from the wind, and the line of oak trees starting to shed their leaves, carpeting the road in soft golden brown. But one thing had changed. Me. I stopped at the red light. No cars ahead, no one behind me urging me forward. In that brief moment, I no longer felt the tightness in my chest like I used to. No more muffled sobs behind the wheel. Just a soft breath, like a gentle goodbye to the woman I used to be, the one who lived for the approval of a man who had long forgotten her heart. I looked into the rearview mirror and saw myself, my hair now cut short, my eyes no longer dull with fatigue. I gently turned on the radio. A piano instrumental began to play, and when the light turned green, I pressed the gas, turned left, into a new curve, not just on the road, but in the course of my life. Saturday afternoon, sunlight poured through the white linen curtains, falling softly onto the freshly varnished oak floor I had refinished just last week. In my small kitchen, now remodeled in Japandi style, simple, warm, yet elegant, a white porcelain teapot let out gentle wisps of steam over chamomile tea. I sat on an olive velvet chair by the window, opened a book I had left unfinished last year. No phone buzzing, no one expecting dinner, no passive-aggressive remarks about how I lacked empathy. Just me, in a space that was mine alone. I looked around this house, once an invisible prison, now a haven built by my own hands. The abstract earth tone painting above the fireplace, the handmade pendant light I ordered from a pottery studio in North Carolina, the soft linen pillows on the bench, all reflected a version of me that was quiet, whole, and no longer seeking anyone's permission to exist. I no longer waited for apology messages, no longer needed to explain why I was tired, or why I needed quiet. I no longer felt lonely when I was alone. I no longer questioned myself every time someone dismissed my feelings and told me I was too sensitive. It took me years to understand. Leaving a marriage isn't failure. It is an act of courage, especially when you still love the person, but choose yourself instead. I took a deep breath. In that moment, I knew I had escaped, not just from a man, but from the trap of goodness being taken for granted. I had walked through it all, and finally, I chose to stay. With myself. Leave a comment if you've ever walked through hard days no one else knew about. Hit like if you believe women, at any age, deserve to be heard, to be free, and to be loved the right way. And if you think this story might help someone understand that being alone isn't scary, what's scary is losing yourself to please someone else, then please share this video with them. Thank you for staying until the very end. I'm still here, along with thousands of other women, and we were never as alone as we thought.